Hi, everybody. Marc Summers, and today we're going to be talking to Dr. Lisa Williams. We discuss rising to the occasion, even when you don't know what you're doing.
What does it mean to be successful? Is this it? I don't know.
And following your heart to creative change in the lives of children.
And I just kept telling myself, you've got to do something. This can't happen on your watch. You cannot have a young generation of girls growing up believing they're less than.
Through the joy of toys.
But I had no background. I mean, less than nothing is what I knew. I knew nothing. But I had this strong passion to make sure that I made things better.
Now, don't forget to like and subscribe to Marc Summers Unwraps. As a kid, I worked at the Sheraton Hotel in Boston when I was going to school. And it was the hot hotel next to the Ritz, and we had a lot of celebrities stay there. So I would get there early in the morning and go through the list of people who were coming in. And if I saw any celebrities, I would say to the other people at the front desk, this person's mine, okay? And so I met, Steve Allen and fascinating people. And I would have the guts to say to them, can we get together? I sat up in Soupy's sales room for 2 hours and interviewed him. I still have it on tape. Did it on a reel-to-reel, and I was able to delve into his life because I wanted to be Soupy Sales at the time. I wanted to be on television, and I had no idea how you did that. I was a kid from Indiana who went to school in Boston. I wanted to be on TV, but nobody taught me how to do that. And I figured, well, if I talk to enough people and learn their story, maybe I could grab a piece of what they did and apply it to my life and then become whatever I became. And that's what I find fascinating about this stuff. When we had Dr. Lisa Williams on, here was this highly educated woman who had no idea she was going to be in the toy business. But one thing happened in her life that she saw on CNN, and she changed her whole career and has become, magnificent at it. And I just think the uniqueness of people's lives is what intrigues me. Dr. Lisa Williams is with me. We are unwrapping you and your life, and we've already done one show out in the hallway and learned a lot about each other. You're the quintessential guest on this program, and I'll tell you why. I was filling in on a radio station here in Los Angeles over the holidays, and one of the things I wanted to do was talk to the people from Bombas and Untuckit and find out how they started a business that, from what I did in my research, they really didn't know anything about. And that's what you did. So we're going to discuss your company, your life, but we're going to start off, where are you from originally?
I'm from Ohio. I'm from this little town called Toledo, Ohio.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
I'm from Indianapolis. And my mother's relatives are from Toledo.
No way.
And I spent every summer of my childhood in Toledo, Ohio.
No way. You've got to be kidding me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what part of Toledo were you in?
Westmoreland area.
Oh, my God. We used to go to Ottawa Park.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay.
Yes, I know exactly where that is.
Where I'm talking
I played at Ottawa Park.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Yeah, we played golf over there.
Yes.
And used to go
Tennis.
to basketball games at TU.
Yeah.
And,
do you
remember an area called the Colony?
Yes, I do.
It was down Monroe Street.
Yeah.
You remember Monroe
Oh,
Street?
No. You remember the Colony?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I was a kid. They had a magic shop there, and my grandmother lived about a 15-minute walk away, and I used to walk down there, and I started my career as a magician, and I would go down there and buy magic tricks down in the Colony. Absolutely.
So Toledo had an impact on both of us.
On both of us. Absolutely.
Small town. Amazing.
It was. So what were your goals? What'd your parents do, first of all?
My mom was an entrepreneur. She actually ran a nursery, so she took care of children.
Nice.
And my father worked as a mechanic, or a machinist, at a factory called Unicast in Toledo, Ohio, that went out of business many years later.
And did you have brothers and sisters?
I do. I have one sister.
And tell me about the inspiration that your parents gave you to become who you are today.
That's a great question, because I remember my mother once, we were walking through the house just talking, and she said, you can be anything you want to be. And I was like looking up at her as a little girl and I'm thinking, no, not really. She said, you can be anything. Like you could be a doctor if you wanted. I was like 8 years old, and that passing statement had an impact on me. So, fast forward 20 years later, I became a doctor.
So what high school did you go to in?
Notre Dame Academy, Pennsylvania.
And so my mom went to, I want to say...
Macaulay?
Woodward.
Oh, Woodward.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And then I had DeVilbiss was the other one, I think.
Absolutely.
Right?
Right.
So those are big ones. So you go to high school.
Yes.
And what do you want to do when you graduate and go to college?
I want to go to college, and at that time, I wanted to major in psychology. But I ultimately transferred over to business because my uncle said that to get a degree into psychology, to really be able to take care of yourself, you're going to need to get a doctorate. And I was like, I'm not going to school that long.
No way, right?
Little did I know. Right. So I majored in business.
And and you went to what college first?
At this time, I went to a couple, but at this time, I went to the Ohio State University. No, I was at Wright State as an undergraduate.
Wright
so
State,
Wright
okay.
State at Dayton, Ohio.
Yep. Yeah, I used to. I'm trying to think. Back in the Nickelodeon tour, we used to play. I guess it was Wright something. Who was Wright named after? I'm trying. Was it the Wright brothers?
Exactly, the Wright brothers. Mm-hmm,
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
And we used to play a theater there every year, and it was a nice, the Midwest. There's something nice about coming from that area, When you look at some the Johnny Carsons and the Dick Cavetts and the people who started their careers, that Midwest upbringing had something important.
I agree with you.
So you went to Wright State, and then you went to Ohio State, and your first job was?
Wow, these are great questions. I haven't thought about this. My first job was working at General Motors, actually, in their marketing department.
Really?
Yes.
In Detroit?
Yes. Well, actually, I worked out of the Dayton office. So I worked because it was a summer job. So I was getting my undergraduate degree at Wright State in Dayton, and then I worked at General Motors.
So
doing
you were in
research.
your young 20s.
Yes, very young 20s.
All
yes.
right. So you're working there, and you're getting more degrees, and you're maybe 25 years old, and you say, now what?
Yes. In a nutshell, that's it.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to a friend and saying, I'm thinking about going and getting a doctorate, but I don't know. That's 3 or 4 years of school, additional schooling. And she said, well, you know what? You're going to be older in 3 or 4 years too. So you want to be older with a degree, a doctorate, or do you want to be 3 to 4 years older without the doctorate? And I said, well, that makes it pretty simple. So I went and got the doctorate.
You got the doctorate.
And at that time, I didn't know there had never been an African-American female to get a doctorate in that area. I didn't know.
So tell me that story.
Oh, boy. Well, I really didn't know until I went for the interviews. And I was talking to one college professor that was interviewing me, and he says, so why are you here? And I'm like, to apply to become a PhD student. And he says, we've never had a Black PhD student here. So I thought you were here to interview for the job of the head coach because...
What?
Honestly. My first
God.
couple of weeks or years, they were not very friendly because they didn't know what to make of me. I was something totally different.
What year was this?
This was in let me think, I'm bad with years, Mark. Give me a moment. So I was undergrad, so it would have been 82. So under 5 years, 82 plus 5, 87, 88.
87. So
Yeah,
even
somewhere
in
in there.
87, 88, they thought you were there to be a coach.
To be a coach. You must be here to be a coach because we've never had an African American in our program, and we don't believe that they can handle the rigor of our program.
They
here.
didn't say those words out loud.
They did, and they said it more than once. And I remember one professor literally saying it to me in a classroom full of other students.
Saying you can't handle this?
Absolutely.
So how do you respond to that?
Oh, I have to tell you this story. 'Cause
Yeah.
This is really interesting. So this was literally the first week in my PhD program. And so I'm, wet behind the ears, and I'm super excited about being here. And it's a small classroom, maybe about 8 to 12 students are there. And the professor comes in late, and he says, I'm so sorry I'm late. I was on the phone talking to my business partner, and we're thinking about starting a maid service. And my ears are perked up a little bit at that. And then he goes on to say, and we're only going to hire African-American women to do it. And I'm like,
Why?
exactly. So I say, my inquisitive mind want to know, right? So I did that same, raise my hand. May I ask why, doctor? Da, 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 da. And he says, because they have a history of knowing how to serve, and they're the best at it. And I responded, what you're really talking about?
It's slavery.
Exactly, it's slavery. And then he says, oh, no, don't be so sensitive.
Oh,
we would
my
hire
God.
Black men too, but they're on the street corner listening to rap or in prison.
And this is an educated, so-called professor-ish kind of human.
He was a full professor. Yes, absolutely.
In 1988.
Correct.
Good God.
And I'm 2 weeks into a program and thinking, how do I handle this? And ultimately, I did respond and say that I do think that some of these comments are racist.
You think?
I didn't use that word because I knew that would be inflammatory and would insult him. And I really realized that my best bet of winning, if you want to call it that, was to succeed in this program.
So what did you say? What term did you use? Do you remember?
I just said that I think you're talking a history that wasn't fine to African Americans, and you're talking about slavery. And I just kind of left it at that. And then after he kind of shut me down by saying, no, you're just super sensitive. I just remember thinking, okay, Lisa, you can fight your battle right here and within 2 weeks of this program, or you can study hard, get your degree, and then make a difference in the world.
It's hard enough to do any of these things. Even more difficult for a woman to accomplish these tasks. But for a black woman, it's ridiculous.
It's incredibly hard.
And so what motivated you to get through all that BS?
I had a goal. And I wanted to make a difference. And I wanted to show that we, being in this particular example, African American and women, were smart enough, were mentally strong enough to handle the rigor in the program. And I just would not allow any negative energy or negative words to dissuade me.
Was there somebody that you looked up to growing up and said, I admire that person, or I want to be that person, or I want to do what that person does?
Yes, there are many. Wilma Rudolph is one of mine.
Yeah.
Shirley Chisholm is another person.
Yep.
Madam C.J. Walker is another person.
Okay, I'm going to tell you this. Ready for this?
Yeah.
Madam C.J. Walker's great-great-granddaughter went to school with me. We're best friends, Alelia Bundles. Yes.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
no.
You got to meet her too.
I have to meet her.
She's amazing. Yeah, I could tell you stories about that because there's the Walker Theater in Indianapolis, Indiana, that is named after Madam Walker. And what people don't know, there's a story. They did it on Netflix and they screwed it up. That's a whole other story because the wrong people were in charge. But Madam C.J. Walker was the first woman millionaire in the United States of America.
Yes.
And somehow ain't in the history books.
I know.
Isn't that ridiculous?
Isn't that?
Yeah. And she had quite a life.
I can only imagine all the things she had to do because you don't have a role model. It's not like you can say, I need to do it like Sally did and follow that path. There is no path. You're just creating it as you go along.
She went and spoke at these conventions where, forget that they wouldn't allow a woman. Here's this black woman who got up there, and she built the better mousetrap. The way she came up with the concept of black women's hair and they're back. Madam Walker actually has a line back out again now.
I just saw it in the
Did you see
store.
this?
I just saw it.
So that's out there as well. So I'm all over the place here because there's so many things I want to talk to you about. I produced a show for Food Network for a while called Restaurant Impossible. And I go back to the I Love Lucy episode where they liked Lucy's salad dressing. And they tried to make their own salad dressing and found out they were losing like 20 cents a bottle. And when we did Restaurant Impossible, these people went, boy, you make the best, brisket in the world. You ought to open up a restaurant. Well, they've had no experience doing it. And that's why I was able to do that TV show for so many episodes was we went in and tried to solve problems because these people didn't do their homework. Okay. So you became this amazing professor. Talk to me about where you got your job in Arkansas, how that happened, and all the accolades that go behind that.
Well, I got my doctorate from the Ohio State University, and then I was recruited for Penn State, Pennsylvania, University, and I went there, and that I became the first African-American female in the College of Business as a professor.
Really?
Yes.
Where'd you live in Philly?
It was actually in State College.
Oh, you were State College?
Happy Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah. So lived, and I loved it. I loved Happy Valley. It's
Nice.
really quaint. It's grown up quite a bit now. But back then it was very quaint, so I really loved it. Hershey was not far away. And so I loved being a professor there. And I did my research, and I won teaching awards, and I won research recognition. And then I became the first tenured African-American female. And then that's when I was going to say Sam Walton came a-knocking, but that's when then the University of Arkansas saying, we'd love for you to come and be a professor here.
How did they find you?
Well, you know what? In the field of supply chain management and logistics, it's not very large, and I'm the only African-American female in the field, so I'm not hard to identify in events. And I was a very prolific researcher, so I was constantly researching and publishing. And because of that, my name became known.
So here's this black woman from Ohio. Has accomplished some things at a very young age, and knock on the door, come to Arkansas, okay? And your first thought was?
Ain't gonna go.
Because it was the South?
It was the South. At that time, I was divorced and I had a 2-year-old son, and there was just no way. I was going to the South by myself with a 2-year-old little black boy.
So you turned him down how many times?
Oh, I don't know. I can't. It was like, no, thank you, but no, thank you. Thank you again, but no, thank you.
And what convinced you to take it?
They made me an offer, as they say on The Godfather, that I couldn't refuse. They came back and said, how about we give you a multi-million-dollar endowed chair to do your research and to have your own program? And I thought, that's wonderful, because it allows me to help other people. I could help students by funding various projects. I could help doctoral students by funding their theses and their dissertations. So all of that made me feel like I was making a difference, and that helped to turn the tide for me.
So how long were you there?
I was there 4 years.
And then what happened?
During my time there, I was going back and forth to the home office of Walmart, and I got to meet many of the executives, and I was writing a book, actually, and the book was entitled Leading Beyond Excellence. I wanted to know what was true success, because I was experiencing something I didn't recognize, meaning I was young, I was the highest ranking person in my field, and I had achieved so many accolades before, first African-American to graduate Ohio State, first to get tenure at Penn State, first to go on to become the highest ranking in the field, whether it's black, yellow, purple, green, I was the highest ranking person. And now I'm teaching, again, undergrads, but PhD students, business executives, master's thesis students. And I'm thinking, is this success? Is this it? I don't know. And so I then started researching other successful people saying, what does it mean to be successful? Because I knew it wasn't the money, and I knew it wasn't the titles, but what is it? And so in doing research, I discovered that it isn't the money and it isn't the title, it's significance. Are you making a difference in someone else's life?
Yeah, tell that to Elon Musk.
Yeah, well.
Because not everybody thinks like you.
This is true.
Yeah.
But that's my belief. And so that got me into publishing, because I published my first book.
And the book was?
The book was Leading Beyond Excellence, 7 Spiritual Steps to Spiral Yourself to the Top.
And so Walmart loved that book.
They did.
And they came to you and said?
They came to me and said, can we sell this book in our stores? And I'm like, yeah.
Sure, why not?
Why not? It took me less than a nanosecond to agree to that. Yeah, I was thrilled.
And then they asked you to write children's books.
Yes, that book did very well. And they came to me and they said, we think you understand how to tell stories. Would you be willing to do some books for us? And I was like, no. No, yeah. I'm a college professor. I teach executives. I don't do children's literature. But I recognized that I had an opportunity to, again, support literacy in multicultural children's homes. And so I started a publishing company, hired illustrators and hired writers, and we did a line of books.
Okay, now let's stop you right there. How did you know how to do that? Are you in Arkansas here?
I'm in Arkansas at this time.
So publishers and writers and illustrators, where did you go to do it?
That's a great question. I guess, again, it goes back to me being a researcher. I mean, that's the core of who I am, is a researcher. So I researched and found out how you write a book, how do you get an agent, et cetera, and understand that the options between self-publishing and going through a traditional publishing house. And as I did that research, I just decided, well, I think I'm going to publish myself. And then, so I had that publishing company. And so when Walmart came in this example and said, we'd like you to do a series of books that includes all children, I thought, I can do that.
What were the topics?
Oh, there was just basic children's topics. Like one was Amelia Asks Why, which is like, have you had the little child that's very curious? Why? Exactly. Why? Yeah, why is that, Mom?
I have a 8-year-old and a 2-year-old grandson, so I know exactly what you're talking about, especially the 2-year-old.
So we did that, and then we did Amelia's Best Friend, which is just talking about she's lost her stuffed animal, who's her best friend, and the adventure she goes through around the house trying to find it. Several books. We talked about, taking vacations with family.
So was this only at Walmart?
At this time, they were. They started just at Walmart, yes.
And they were doing well?
They were doing well.
Okay.
Yeah, that surprised me, but they were doing well.
So you're home watching CNN, and tell me this story because this story changed your life.
Totally changed my life. I was literally, as you said, Saturday afternoon, just lounging on the sofa, watching a CNN report featuring Anderson Cooper and Soledad O'Brien. And they did an updated doll study. And we know the doll study results from the 50s and 60s, right? All the children, be they black or white, said that no one wanted to play with a black doll because black doll was viewed as stupid, bad. So no one wanted to play with it. Well, now we're fast forwarding to 2009. I'm haphazardly watching this TV show because I know what the results are going to be, right? I know what's going to happen because at this time we have African-American, our first president, beautiful first family, covers of magazines. Have beautiful African-American and multicultural stars and celebrities. So truly, this has changed. And then they show this beautiful little black girl, beautiful girl. And they asked her which doll she wanted to play with. And she said she wanted to play with the white doll. But what broke my heart is when she said, why? And she said, because the black doll skin is nasty.
I find that so
But
odd.
Mark, that's not
that
the worst
a black
part.
girl,
I have
gets
to
worse.
no. It gets much worse because then she literally touched her own hand, the back of her own skin, rubbed it when she was saying nasty.
Oh my!
As to indicate that her skin was nasty. That's what broke my
I
heart.
just got chills. That made me very upset.
Yeah, it breaks your heart.
It really does, and you wonder that must be a learned response. What brought the world brought it to that. I mean, that's sickness. So you then said at that moment, I'm going to change that.
After I stopped crying, and I just kept telling myself, you've got to do something. This can't happen on your watch. You cannot have a young generation of girls growing up believing they're less than.
And
so,
you didn't play with dolls as a kid.
Not really. I really didn't. My sister played with dolls. I was more of, if I had to pick, I'd say I was really a bookworm. I love to read. Not much with dolls and toys, but I do have a vivid memory of lining up my stuffed animals and my dolls in a semicircle and teaching them the day's lessons that I learned from school. So I do remember that. I've always loved learning and teaching.
So you see this TV segment, you cry, and then you say, I'm going to change this. What was your first step?
Wow. My first step was to go back to Walmart because they had asked me if I was interested in doing a line of dolls in the image and likeness of the characters in the books. And I'd said no. And I said no, not once, not twice, but literally 3 times, Mark. I said no because that wasn't my area. I didn't know anything about it. But again, as life would have it, fast forward 3 weeks, I'm watching this documentary with this beautiful little girl saying her skin tone was nasty and the doll's skin tone was nasty. So then I called Walmart up and I said, okay, I'll do it. And so we started on this journey of me creating these dolls, but I had no background. I mean, less than nothing is what I knew. I knew nothing. But I had this strong passion to make sure that I made things better for that little girl playing on the floor with her doll.
I'm going to tell you something you need to do. Ready? Mm-hmm. You need to go to Anderson Cooper and Soledad and find that segment and find that little girl.
I would love to.
You need to do that.
I would love
that
to.
tape exists.
Yeah.
Because she was an inspiration
Absolutely.
to you. Mm-hmm. And that was 2009, you said?
Yes.
And she was how old, do you think?
Oh, I would say she's 6 to 8, something like that.
Okay, so we'll say she's 8 years old. She's now 30.
Wow.
Can you imagine what that I'd love to have that conversation with her and find out what the thought process was and what she's doing with her life these days, because the inspiration that she gave you and the changes. So now you go to Walmart and you say, okay, I'm ready to do these dolls. And they said,
Great.
Yep. So what's your first step?
Go back to research.
Go back to research.
So I'm looking on the internet, and I'm trying to find doll manufacturers, and I quickly discovered that
There's
there are
none here.
Exactly.
None here.
0.
China?
Yes. I fly on a plane. I search. I find 3 factories that I didn't know them. They didn't know me. I literally catch a plane, and I'm in Shenzhen.
So you don't know anybody there.
0.
You get off the plane.
Yes.
What happens?
I realize then reality begins to hit me like, oh my God,
A black woman in China.
Exactly,
right?
Mark. Exactly. And I knew no one there. I couldn't call anyone. But thank goodness the factory people recognized me because, again, I'm the only black woman standing there in Shenzhen. So they find me. I hop in their car. Their car is not safe by American standards. and we are wiggling in and around winding roads with no sidebar at all, doing 90 miles per hour. I'm white knuckling it through these hills like, oh my.
And for you, that wasn't easy.
No, that's... I love it. That's right. That wasn't easy.
No.
So imagine how I was terrified. And then it hits me. You can't even call your family and tell them where you are. You're here.
Did anybody speak English?
They spoke better English than I spoke Mandarin. So
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah.
And so you get there and say, I want to build these dolls.
Correct.
And they probably said, here's the way you're going to do it.
That's exactly correct.
And you said,
No.
no, you're not.
Exactly. I said no. I said, we're going to start from scratch. I have a vision of how I want these dolls to look. And they said, you're wasting your time and your money. Listen to us. You don't know what you're doing because you've never done this before. And they were right. I didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
And they said, hey, we will take you into a room. And in this room, there are all these facial sculpts. Just pick one and we'll apply brown paint to it. And there's your African-American doll.
No.
And that's exactly what I said. Nope. That's not it. We're not going to do that. And I found myself in an argument with gentlemen in China and got to realize I'm by myself without a chaperone, an interpreter, or protection, arguing with these gentlemen about what I'm not going to do. And at some point, it begins to hit me, you're really at a disadvantage here. But I think my conviction was so strong that they knew they couldn't dissuade me that the other eventually acquiesced and said, okay, we'll do it your way.
I'm going to assume they didn't respect women there either.
No, not to how we would prefer.
So you wanted to create the faces on your own.
Yes.
Okay. And the other situation was, this is not just a black doll. This is a
multicultural doll. Yes.
Exactly. So you wanted different colors, different looks.
Yes.
And did they get that at all?
No.
No.
And so I realized then that I had to custom blend the skin tones because what they were offering, I'm like, no, that has too much red in it. That has too much gray in it. Nope, I don't. So I started mixing colors and coming up with skin tones because I wanted them to be authentic.
How long were you there doing this?
I was there. That first trip, I went back several times, but that very first trip, I was there about 4 or 5 days.
And so when you put these paint...
That was the second trip.
Okay,
Yep.
So you did those, and you did the different facial stuff and all that kind of stuff. How long from those couple of trips till you manufactured the first doll?
About 2 years.
Oh my, really?
Yeah. Oh, it's a long process. People think that you just see a doll and you go, oh, I'm going to make one. No, it takes a long time. And that was my first one, so it took me a little longer. But usually about 18 months to a year. Yeah. And a year is very fast.
And how many do you order because you don't know if it's going to be a success or not?
Correct. You don't. You find out from the factory what their minimum order quantities are. And you, as in this case, me, I have to meet that. So if they say I'm just throwing out a number, if they say it's 5,000 units, then I have to make sure that I can sell 5,000 units because they won't make any quantity less than that. So, yeah.
And here's the other thing, we always talk about in the restaurant business, food costs. So we would go in to a restaurant and say to the guy, what are your food costs? And they wouldn't even know what that meant. And generally, most successful restaurants, unless you're a high-end sort of French or some sort of New York bistro, 28 to 32%. If you're doing over 32% in the food business, you're not making a profit. So how do you know how much this doll is going to cost versus how much you can sell it for?
Oh,
because you
Mark,
have no knowledge of that.
I have no knowledge of it. This is where all the learning curve comes in. I often say that this is such an interesting story because I started this with no mentoring, no money, no experience or background in the toy industry. I had not worked for another toy industry. I hadn't even gone to a toy industry conference.
Really?
No. So I knew nothing. But I had to learn, and ultimately I did. And then that's one of the things I learned is margins. What's a proper margin? Because I didn't know.
Yeah.
I was so focused on making sure that I could get a doll that was authentic and that I could get a doll that was affordable by that child's parents. Because if I made a doll that was authentic and the parents couldn't afford it,
what good is it?
What exactly, right? That's not the vision.
And the Walmart crowd, let's face it, is in a high-end group. So you've got to, with all due respect, the success there is insane.
Yes.
But you can't sell a doll for $80 at Walmart.
Correct. So
you got to keep the numbers down.
Right.
For your side, and then Walton has to be able to sell it at a price where they're making a profit.
Correct.
And here's the other thing. You and I grew up with Toys R Us, okay, and
Yes.
KB Toys and things like that. These things don't exist anymore. So how do you – now they did for a slight period, I guess, when you started, but then they went away. So how do you go about marketing and get the word out about these dolls to the proper? And by the way, I'm assuming you don't want to just market to, the black community you want to everybody.
Yes, because multiculturalism is everywhere,
Yes,
right?
of
So
course.
your child, the doll may not look like her, but it looks like somebody in her classroom,
Yeah.
or somebody in her church, or somebody that she sees in the grocery store. So children have a tendency not to say, I want the black doll or I want the Latina doll. They're like, I want a doll that looks like my friend Sherry. I want a doll that looks like my friend Sally. And so we want to make sure that all dolls represent all children so that they have that flexibility to get a
remember
doll that looks like their friend.
When Cabbage Patch came out with the first minority doll, and it was like, it was leading off the 6 o'clock news, okay? And then
Crazy.
what was it, the American Doll? I forget, or they sell those things for an insane amount of money, and I believe they have ethnic-looking dolls now. But you were on the forefront of that whole situation. I mean, I remember when my daughter would go to Toys R Us, I think there was one black doll on the shelf, maybe, but it was all Barbie and, Betsy Wetsy and all those kinds of things from back in the day. But there weren't a lot of minority dolls. So if you're a person of color back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, early 80s, you didn't have a choice. I would imagine that most black children had a white doll.
Yes, we had lots, and speaking for my sister, she had lots of them. Even as far as the 2000s, I would even venture to say there weren't authentic dolls, and that's what we bring to the shelf. It's not just bringing a brown doll or a tan doll, representing that skin tone. It's about the whole authenticness of the doll.
What does that mean?
So it means that the sculpt is authentic, meaning I am looking at unique facial features of every ethnicity and making sure that the lips reflect that culture, the nose, the eyes, the
hair.
cheeks, the hair, the proportion between the upper lip and the nose. All of that goes into effect when you're creating something that's truly authentic. So that's what we do, making sure the hair, like to your point, that we have a variety of textures and styles and colors. Even when it comes to our bodies, we want our bodies to be more fuller and more representative. I really want to empower children. So when you're playing with this doll, you're seeing a positive reflection back to you. And then you're now beginning to think, well, my doll can become an astronaut, or my doll can become, a physician, a doctor, a veterinarian. Maybe I can do that too. That's the whole idea. And so we do it for boys and for our girl dolls.
When I started doing stand-up comedy, I used to have conversations with some early black comics. And the term, and I've heard this through black women as well who were in Tiffany Haddish interview, there's nobody on TV when I was growing up that looked like me.
Yes.
Okay. And Red Fox was somebody when I grew up, but he did filthy albums and he was hysterical, yes. But it wasn't the kind of thing that was for the masses. Okay?
Correct.
And I think in my mind, the first person that broke through of color was Flip Wilson. Okay, I remember him. And there was a comedian who I loved. His name was Godfrey Cambridge.
I loved him.
He was fantastic.
Yes.
But there weren't a lot of folks out there. And same thing with, I remember Sidney Poitier. But beyond that, there weren't a lot of black performers. So, you had done your homework and you mentioned Madam Walker and Shirley Chisholm and people like that. But there are young girls today, I think, who have an advantage because there are a ton of people they can tune to. And it's not like when I was growing up in Indiana in the 50s and 60s where you never saw people of color.
Yeah.
So you've added to that and given a positive thought to these people. And I understand you're doing male dolls as well.
Yes,
Tell
we
me
are.
about that.
Well, I have 2 boys, and we did the girls to empower them and let them know they're beautiful and they're brilliant. And then I started noticing that there's not a lot of positive male doll role models either, because what I saw sometimes when I look on news media about how black men are portrayed, it's not necessarily in the brightest light. It's not in a positive portrayal. But yet when I look around my community and my family, I'm seeing men that are powerful, brilliant, chivalrous, and amazing. But I wasn't seeing that. And I certainly didn't see it in the doll category. And so that's why we created Fresh Squad. And they're truly authentic looking dolls, both their bodies and their faces, their hair textures as well. we call them action figures with fashions because you can do anything you can do with our dolls as you can with an action figure.
Well, now it's okay, for a boy to play with the dolls.
There's no
You
problem.
buy a doll for your son. That's perfectly, acceptable, as opposed to, things have changed. Thank God for the better. Tell me about self-esteem.
Yes. Self-esteem is powerful. It is that thing that distinguishes between whether you're successful or whether you're not. You have to believe in yourself first.
But that's not easy in certain communities because I'm going to give you, facts that I don't want to give you.
Okay.
A lot of people in the Black community only have one parent, and it's generally the mother and the grandmother who are raising those folks. And so it's a fatherless home. It tends to happen more than it should. How do you build self-esteem when you're just trying to pay the bills?
Parents have a hard way to go. They do. And that's why we also believe that we are providing a toolkit to help parents to empower their children. So we have, like I said, the books, and we started with books, and then we have the dolls. It's so that parents have resources to go to because it's tough. You're right. As a parent, you have to constantly go against societal norms of what your child is and what they can become, and oftentimes into what's perceived as beautiful. Right? We're still dealing with that. What is true beauty? Right? And sometimes it's not darker skin and curlier hair. It still may be lighter skin, straighter hair. So as a parent, how do you tell your daughter or son that they're beautiful and they're handsome when there's not a lot of examples and representation of that out there? So in that respect, we hope that we are helping parents by giving them these toys to help, deliver that message.
So you have a passion to inspire young people.
Absolutely.
Tell me about that.
You know what? It's young people, it's women, it's girls. I just know that society as a whole will be better when we each and every one of us know who we are and what we're capable of achieving. I've done a lot of firsts, right? I talked about first African American get a PhD, first to get tenure, first to da-da. Now we have the largest multicultural doll company. It's a lot of firsts, but the reason why I'm able to do it with amazing people that work with me is because I believe in myself and I believe in the people who work with me. If at any time I think I can't do something, then guess what? I can't do something. And that gift that I wanted to give to the world will be void of that gift. It won't have it. If I didn't believe I could do dolls, even though I had no mentoring, I keep going back to this thing, no mentoring, no money, no experience, no education in it. If at any point I had taken much advice that was given to me that you should stop, you can't compete with the big guys, you don't have the money, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the experience. If at any point I'd said, yeah, you're right, they're right, and I don't believe I can do it, then the world and the children would be void of what we're offering. And that's heartbreaking.
And so what haven't you accomplished that you would like to accomplish?
There's so much. There's so much to do. And that's kind of how I feel. There's so much to do. I want to create it so that children have a true safe space. So wherever they look, they see positive image reflected back to them. So when they wake in the morning, they're comforted. When they go to take their shower curtain. When they get dressed for school, they have a T-shirt. They put on their backpack. All of these have like fresh dolls on them, positively perfect dolls, but just so that they are seeing themselves in every aspect of their life. Again, the idea is for them to know that they can achieve whatever their goals are. It doesn't matter what's been done before. They can be the trailblazer. They can create it. If they have a vision, they can do it.
How many dolls do you have now? I mean, do you change the line on a regular basis?
We do. We're constantly improving and updating. And I can't count how many we have, Mark. We're constantly increasing them. I can't even count how many SKUs. Yeah, I can't.
And so is there like Barbie's been around for 150 years. Is there a doll that is such with your line, or do you just say, no, every 2, 3, 4, 5 years, we're going to just mix it up a bit?
We do a combination of both. So we do bring out new characters every other year, and we do have some stable characters. Like our Mia doll is stable because she's so popular. Our Ebony doll is stable, and some of our boy dolls are very stable. But we do mix in different characters. We want to keep the line fresh.
So you're at Walmart, you're at Target.
Yes.
Where else can I get these dolls?
Oh, geez. You can get them at Walmart, Target, Amazon, Meijer, and we're in conversations with so many retailers. It continues to grow.
So your parents still around?
Yes. Oh, well, my mom is.
Yeah, your mom is.
We lost our dad.
What does she think?
She's a proud mama. That's the best I can say. She's really proud. And, your parents are someone who always believed in you no matter what. And like I said, she was the one who first told me I could become a doctor. Now, I was thinking, I'm sure as she was too, medical doctor,
Right.
but that wasn't my plan. That wasn't the plan for me. It was becoming a doctorate in the area of business. So, yeah,
How old
she
are your
planted the seed.
kids, your boys?
My kids are now 24 and 26.
And what do they think about Mom?
You know, that's really interesting. I think they're proud of Mom. I think that one of them has followed in my footsteps. He's an entrepreneur too. So I'm really proud. That's something that he saw me do. He wanted to emulate. So that's really cool. And my other son is very educated and loves education. So I guess in different ways, they took different aspects of me. But I think they're really proud.
Understand that you made Oprah's list of favorite things.
Yay! That was also something you just want to pinch yourself. You're like, Oprah knows about us. Not only does she know it, she selected us as her favorite thing. Wow!
Did you get a chance to meet her at all?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
That's the next goal, huh?
Let's hope.
Yeah. You got to feel really good about what you're doing.
You know what? I didn't. You know, when you're an entrepreneur, you're so busy working, and your head is always down to the grindstone, just working. You got to get the work out. You got to get the work out. But here lately, I've started, because of things like the Wonder Woman Award, right, and Disney and Marvel, working with it. I'm starting now to sit back and say, wait a minute, maybe I have done something good here. So I really am just starting to sit back and begin to contemplate maybe I have. And then someone said to me, you do realize that before you, there was no category for authenticity in dolls.
No.
They're just it didn't exist. I didn't think of that because you're so busy working and doing the work. Now, like I said, getting to talk to you, you're making me think, and I'm thinking, I'm honored to be a part of this process of our global society of recognizing that we need to have some authenticity in the things that we do.
No question about it. So you work so hard. We talked for 15, 20 minutes out in the hallway before we came in here and started recording this thing. What do you do to relax?
My family would say I don't. But
is there a place you like going to where you just kind of contemplate your navel?
Yes, there is. There's a place in San Diego. Actually, it's in Encinitas. It's Meditation Gardens.
Oh,
and it's have you been there?
I know all about it.
Okay, it's gorgeous. And there's a breeze that always flows through. You sit up high and you look down at the ocean and the waves. It's so incredibly peaceful. So there I go, and there's beautiful flowers and beautiful fragrances and a koi pond. It's just very peaceful.
Any place in Europe or in Hawaii, or you've just not had the time to even do that?
I haven't had the time, probably over the last, now I did travel Europe when I was a professor, I had that luxury. Now that I've been working on these dolls nonstop, I've primarily gone to here in America and China, back and forth.
Yeah, back and forth. Do you go to China that often?
I do.
So somebody who is listening to this, who may be 17, 18-year-old young woman, young man of color, of ethnicity, is looking for inspiration. What do you tell them?
I would tell them to follow their heart. Do what it is that they really want to do. And don't be dissuaded by other people who may be well-meaning, saying you can't do it or you shouldn't do it. I give this quote because it's one of my favorite quotes. And it said, there's something that's spoken to your heart. There's something that you have to do. Each of us have that. The idea is to find it. And when you find that spark in your heart, follow that. And even though other people may say, no, don't do it, ignore that because they can't hear what's going on in your heart. And the quote that I say is that people who are dancing seem to be insane by those who can't hear the music. So other
Brilliant.
people outside of you can't hear your music. So they think leaving a professorship, where you're employed for life, where you're the highest ranking in your field, you're making really good money, you're working 3 days a week, to walk away from all of that because you saw a TV show?
Interesting. Well, you were born with passion, okay? I was born with passion. When I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, I discovered Johnny Carson, okay? He was doing a show called Who Do You Trust? And I decided at that point that that's what I wanted to do, okay? Most people don't have that, okay? Sometimes you're born with it. And so during the whole COVID situation, and we were all at home ready to, figure out what the hell's going on out here.
Yeah.
I was dealing with the same issues that a lot of people were with, like, what's next? How am I coping? And so I ended up seeing a psychiatrist. And this person said to me, well, what is your passion? And I said, well, it's the entertainment business. And they said, but you can't do that right now. And I've been, I lecture at colleges fairly often, haven't done it obviously during the COVID stuff. And I would always say to people, find a passion and go after it, okay? my mission by this doctor during COVID was, what other passion do you have besides entertainment? And you know what? That was the hardest damn thing, because there's things that I'm passionate about. I consider myself an aficionado on pizza. And
Oh, we got good things in common, Mark. I love pizza.
it's like the
Sorry.
best food in the history of the world, right?
Best.
What's your favorite pizza place?
Oh, there's one in San Diego called Pizzo's.
And you love
Pizzo's Wine and Bar. Yeah, we go almost every Friday, me and my best friend. They know us by name. They say, hey, ladies.
And so there's a pizza place where I live, and I thought, well, do I go in there and sort of educate myself about that? Another thing that I always wanted to do for some reason was to play the flute. I never, ever did that.
I played that in high school.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Well, you and I
Eighth grade.
have so much in common.
Yes.
It's crazy. And so, now I have these opportunities and the time to do it. It's just about getting yourself motivated. And after spending almost 50 years of my life doing one thing and accomplishing many of the goals that I wanted to do, it's a matter of, I guess, getting up enough, to use an old Midwest term, gumption, to take it to another step and another level. But I guess paying back is key. And, if somebody wants to get in touch with you because they have thoughts or whatever, and they want to use your brain to help mentor them, how do they go about doing that?
Oh, reach out to me. Follow me on @the_Dr. So that's @the_Dr. And DM me. I would love to. Yep. It's all about giving back. And so we give back in lots of different ways. You mentioned mentoring. I give back in terms of scholarships. We give to lots of charities. It's all about being a brighter light in the world and doing something really good for our fellow humans.
Normally we get to this earlier in the show, but one of the themes of this podcast is overcoming obstacles. What's the biggest obstacle that you've had to overcome to get where you are today?
Myself.
Ooh, what does that mean?
That means it's kind of what I was saying earlier. You have to have you have to believe in yourself.
Right.
Right. Well, keep in mind, I had been a college professor even before then. So I was always in school, loved school. So I went all the way. I kept going to school, going and going and going and going till ultimately earned a doctorate, right? Then I started teaching in school. So I knew how to do that. And I was really, really good at it. And I loved it. But now I'm in a whole nother area creating toys. And I can't say enough. I knew less than nothing about how to do that. I didn't know anything about how to do it. And so there were opportunities where I could have said, you get out of this. Get out. You don't know what you're doing. But I didn't. And ultimately, I came to the place where I believed and know that my being a novice and not having any experience, not having any education in it was actually an asset. But had I gotten out before I got to that place of self-belief, again, the impact I'm having on people and children would not have happened, and I wouldn't have known what I could achieve. So I had to get over the thought that my limitations of not knowing, I had to flip those and realize that they're actually my strengths. And so I didn't know anything about blending skin tones, but I thought they needed to be done. I didn't know how to create a whole new sculpture for a face, but I knew it had to be done. So I did it without any background. But in doing so, I learned what I was truly capable of doing, what I was truly capable of achieving and becoming. I didn't know that.
If there's one person you could meet, who would it be?
Living or dead?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Let me think. I love that.
A lot of people out there.
Tyler Perry.
Tell me why.
Because we have a similar journey. He had a passion and a belief that he could do it. And he sacrificed everything to the point that he was living in his car for a time. And even though his mom, who loved him dearly, said, son, it's time, let it go, give up, get a good job, get some insurance, right? He didn't. He kept going.
Followed his dream.
Exactly. And now look at him. And
Yeah.
he's able to do so much good for other people. See, that's how I view success. I view success, it's a platform for you to give more, do more, be more. And that's how I think that Tyler lives his life.
Yeah, he seems to give back a lot.
He does.
And
Yeah.
be there for many people. Young lady who used to do my makeup down in Nickelodeon has been his makeup person for many, many years. And seems like a really nice man who goes out of his way to make things happen for people who may not have as much as he does.
Yeah.
And I think that is the goal. He seems to be great at it. You seem to be great at it. I've enjoyed this conversation more than you'll ever know. You've educated me, and I know you've educated our audience. And I look forward to, round 2 after we see more of the Disney stuff and when the first animated series comes out, we'll have even more to talk about. So continued success. Dr. Lisa Williams, thanks for being a part of our show.
Truly my joy and honor. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you. Marc Summers Unwraps is a production of Believe Limited, created by me, Marc Summers, and Jessica Richmond. Produced by Keith Corneluk and Jessica Richmond. Executive produced by Patrick James Lynch and Ryan Gielen. Post-production support from Joshua Sterling Bragg and Believe Limited. Don't forget to subscribe or follow the show on your favorite podcast player, and if you really love it, why don't you leave us a rating and a review? Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Marc Summers Unwraps.